Welcome to the reveal video from my previous video of the GH6 versus the S5ii, and we played a little game to see if you could see the difference between the two cameras. And according to the comments that I got, first of all, thank you so much for participating in that game. And according to the comments, a lot of people, I don't think, could tell the difference between the two cameras. Some did. I think you'll actually be pretty surprised from some of the comparison shots on which camera was which. So we had the GH6 versus the S5ii. Could you tell the difference between those shots? Now, before you get any further in this video, make sure you stop, go watch my previous video about if you can see the difference between the S5ii and GH6 and see if you have your answers right, then come back to this one and I'm gonna reveal everything. I got the settings as close as possible as I could between these two cameras. So thankfully they're both newer cameras, so they have a lot of the same type of settings. They have different engines in them, but they have a lot of the same type of settings. So as far as these different shots go, I shot everything at ISO 640 and I used Vlog for all the shots. I did not do any color grading. I only converted that Vlog footage to a Rec 709. As far as the white balance goes, I used the same white balance, like those outdoor shots. It was cloudy, so I just used the cloud white balance setting on both of these cameras. For the shots that were indoors, I used the custom setting and got my white balance from a gray card. And for all these shots, I was in a 4K 24p and I was at 420 at 10-bit. And remember, according to the other video, I set my exposure according to the gray card and I didn't use any other filters. The only thing that I used to adjust my exposure was the aperture. All right, now that we have all of that stuff out of the way, let's get into what you've been actually waiting for. And I know that watching it on YouTube is a little bit different than having the actual files. So there's a couple of different things that I've noticed that I'll just hit on as we go through these different shots. Now I'm just gonna start with shot number one, and what you notice right away is that there is not a whole lot of difference. And I wanted to do this little walk in and slide in because I was kind of testing the autofocus on this one as well. This first shot kind of sets the stage for the rest of the video, and I'm gonna tell you right now that A cam on this particular shot was the S5ii and B cam was the GH6. Now with the walk in and slide in, there wasn't a huge difference in the autofocus, but you can tell that A cam is just a little bit sharper than the B cam and has a little bit more of a magenta or pinkish tone to it than the B cam, which is the GH6, has a little bit greener of a feel, especially compared to the S5ii. But I was actually really happy with how the autofocus performed on the GH6 with this particular shot. So let's move on to shot two, and this one I wanted to separate right at the start, just so you could see like the little walk-in. So A cam and then B cam is the same thing. I walk into the shot because with this shot, there wasn't a whole lot of difference as far as me walking into the frame and the autofocus picking me up. The big difference that you're gonna notice is that B cam, again, is a little bit pinker or magenta of a tone than the A cam. And then you can really tell the difference once I start walking up. B cam is S5ii and A cam is the GH6. And this is kind of where the autofocus is a little bit noticeably different as I walk in and get closer to the cams. On shot three, even with the same settings, same exact settings, you can tell a little bit of a difference in the colors. B cam has a little bit greener of a tone, which means GH6. A cam, S5ii, you see just a few more magenta tones in there. Now that's something that would probably be very easy to adjust and post if you have to match these cameras. So there's not a whole lot of difference in this shot. Maybe A cam and the S5ii just a little bit sharper. The same with shot four. Now this one, I was not using autofocus. There is no autofocus in this shot. So I am more focused on the building, and you can tell that A cam here is S5ii and B cam is the GH6. All right, now we get to some of the indoor shots, and I really like how these ones matched up. But again, even on these shots, you can tell the difference. Shot 5 A cam is the GH6 and the B cam is the S5ii. So you know it's just a little bit sharper of an image, but as far as some of that low light shadow and highlight mix, honestly I feel like they're very comparable. Shot 6, you see that the A cam now is the S5ii and B cam is the GH6. Shot 7 is a little bit more of a B-roll type shot. In shot 7, A cam is actually the GH6 and B cam is the S5ii. And I didn't have any extra lights set up. I was just using the lighting that was in this coffee shop. But even with this, a quick color correction is going to match this up perfectly. So for shot 8, we're in a little bit different of a section of this coffee shop. And for this shot, A cam is the GH6 and B cam is the S5ii. I kind of wanted to see how, the background window would perform on these different cameras, but honestly, that's not even really that noticeably different. And I just wanted to say thanks to my friend Luke for being in this because I got the cameras really close to his face. On shot 9, A cam is the S5ii, B cam is the GH6, and I think on this one, the colors are very noticeable on his cheeks, especially A cam S5ii, just a little bit more of a magenta feel. So on shot 10, I wanted to get a feel for what the IBIS was doing, and on shot 10, the A cam is the GH6, and the B cam is the S5ii. And then you can kind of see how that IBIS performs as I walk and get a close-up. I kind of feel like that S5ii has just a little bit more stable of a shot. And I'm gonna let you in on a little secret as well. The GH6, I actually had dual IBIS on the GH6 because I had a lens that had optical image stabilization. But on the S5ii, I was using the 20-60, which does not have optical image stabilization. So that right there is just the IBIS on the body of the S5ii. Then on this last shot, shot 11, this was a comparison of the IBIS, but also kind of a low light test to see how these different cams looked in low light. And even at ISO 640, the low light on the GH6, which is the B cam on this one, looks pretty good. I'm seeing a little bit more jitter in that GH6 B cam than I am on the A cam. So here's kind of the conclusion I've come to. These are both fantastic cameras and you can't go wrong with either one of them. But you can tell from these shots, there's not a huge difference in the comparison between these two cameras. So what it comes down to is how you're going to use the camera, and if you need that phase detect autofocus, the S5ii is going to be the way to go. But both cameras give a fantastic image, and ultimately, I don't think you can go wrong with either one. So let me know down in the comments if you were surprised by some of these different shots and which cam was which. Well, that's really all I have for this reveal video. If you have time, maybe stick around. Watch one of these videos that's popping up on your screen right here. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.